Welcome back, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision-making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Teasha Cable, CEO of C Model Data, and today we have an exceptional guest who's at the forefront of innovation. His name is Teron Fox. Over here at C Model, we call him Professor Fox. He combines his passion for teaching and technology with an engineering background to engage audiences globally. Fox, thank you so much. Welcome to the show. So grateful to have you here today. Can you start by sharing a little bit about your journey in the tech world and how it led you into partnership with C Model?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love your energy. It's the same energy you bring to work every day. So I started my career in tech. Really, I fell into love with startups right after college. And after I joined my first startup, I joined as an software engineer, and I had a really good mentor tell me that I talk too much. And they dropped me right into sales engineering at the time, where that's when I really got an opportunity to start growing teams, seeing how a company grows. And 2 or 3 startups later, I got the opportunity to start my own. That startup was called Puzzle Labs. We focused on what is now called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. We're doing it very early on. But since then, we have sold the company to C Model. And now we have been working together to solve this amorphous problem of decisions, which I think we're going to talk about here today on this podcast.
We're going to talk about decisions. For just one moment, tell me a little bit more about how you leverage your deep experience. Let's think about technical demos, workshops. What are some of the things that you believe are the most critical elements for organizations to succeed in leveraging technology for decision making?
I think tools, it's very easy to get into tool and knowledge hell, really, because as you're making decisions, they produce just a bunch of information. And I think as we come to this new age of AI and new tools, we're really going to have to start making better, ironically, decisions about which tools we are using. More specifically, how they're enabling us. Because a question I get all the time is like, yo, Fox, what's the best AI tool? And I find that question hard, because if AI is supposed to help me work better and my better work is supposed to produce certain outcomes, let's say better money,
You start
really,
C Model person, by the way. Go ahead.
I got the bug. But what's nice is that, so the best tool is the best one that helped me produce the best work. And how do you quantify the best work? The best outcomes. So I like Claude because I find that it helps me do my best work that is giving me the raw output. And I find that you have to word it that way because that answer might be different for other people and the type of work that you're doing. You know, like say if it's medical specific, then you should be looking at like some of the Palm and Gemini models. And as we now have to start to really think strategically about how we're thinking about things alongside of doing the work we have to do. And that is a very interesting shift in how we're thinking about just AI technology and even how we build products now.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I would have told you a month ago, just use core for everything. C Model, C Model, C Model. But I'm also shifting my mindset to knowing that different things for different things, right? And some of the tools are much better than other tools. This is why I love that C Model uses all of them, right? We leverage, we're like model agnostic over here. Industry agnostic, model agnostic. But
Absolutely.
I totally appreciate what you're saying right now, because I'm learning on my own. Let's talk a little bit about your insights around the importance of education in ensuring customer success. How do you approach creating engaging information for users? How do you make sure when going back to what we just kind of talked about with AI, how do you do that?
To be honest, it's actually been the most loved part of my career. And out of all the engagements and deals that I've done, what I found that customer has been the most happy with is not just my education, but just education in general. Because we buy this really expensive software or we buy this new software and we kind of go off on our own journey. And sometimes that works very well, and sometimes that doesn't. And so education is that bridge. So that's my corny way of like, it should always really be a part of that sale. But what's really nice is that education, customer success, and support is actually a very lucrative part of that enterprise sale. And so really how I have been thinking about it is, especially in this world of AI, documentation first, most things, is because they provide context, not only your team to do things, but at some point your customer to do things and learn. A lot of the times the material that we need internally to educate our team is the exact same material we need to educate our team externally.
Yeah. This is great. Okay. So stay right there for just a moment because our other guest, he popped on. Who knew
Love
we'd
a
get
surprise
Dr.
guest.
Russ on the call regardless. So let the audience know who's here. So here you go, guys. While we generally have this very smooth podcast, this one is fun for the ages right here. So I want to welcome our second guest, Dr. Muzz, who's the CTO at C Model. And now this conversation is really about to get even 10x more interesting. We were already 5x, but now we're going to make it 10x more interesting with Dr. Muzz on the call as well. So let me first just tell you, we've been talking a little bit just to get you caught up and really, for the audience, get caught up back up too. So what we've been talking about is education and teaching. So we know that Fox has this passion for educating and teaching, and when we're talking about the impact on customer success. So the question that I asked, and you can feel free to lean in on this question too, is getting insights on the importance of education in ensuring customer success. And I asked him how he approached this. And so that's where we are. So Fox, if you would finish your reply, and then we'll jump back in to the conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. What's up, Russ?
Hey,
Yeah. So education, customer success, some of the tips, documentation first, just because it can be used as context with language models. Also, high awareness that any education to educate your internal team is the same education most of the time to educate customers about the product, in which there's a nice just reuse there. The last big thing is using AI to really start to change how we think about our content and personalizing some of this documentation. So some of the interesting things that I've been seeing online is where the documentation can be like rewritten towards to me, and which that is a next level of support that I see the world getting into. And this is going to just really change how we think about customer success, because I know a lot of people are afraid of hands off, but there's going to be some interesting hands on with human and hands off with AI that basically I think is going to define how we educate customers about our product, where the products are going to start educating you about itself.
That's good. Anything there for you, Dr. Muzz, before I move on to the next question?
well, the only thing I would add about the education is read it and then do it. So, and this is a great one that Fox is a great example of. Is not only just read it and talk it, get your fingers, get your on the keyboard and try stuff. Don't be scared. Ask the questions, get the answers back, make mistakes, but that's how you learn. Whether that's just in a chat interface or whether that's like getting a little recipe that you can teach yourself how to do a little bit of code, whatever it's going to be, I think just start doing a little few projects. You're going to learn very quickly.
Yeah, see, I'm getting dangerous, more and more dangerous every day. I'm telling y'all, I'm out here building all kinds of stuff in Claude these days. But my goal is to stay out of you guys' way, though, so I don't create any havoc and confusion. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about leadership. So I'll tailor this one to you, Russ, first. Can you tell me a little bit about how you think about fostering a culture of innovation? Are there any particular strategies that you deploy that actually inspire your team and keep them highly engaged?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. One that we try to do is that's one of our values is like don't think you know everything. There's some humbleness in learning. So first of all, share your learnings. Don't be scared to show what you're working on. Keep that, share that with the team. So that's just a big one of, you call it transparency, call it what you will, but just having the team have a sense of openness and being willing to talk about problems, talking about owning problems when it's an end-to-end solution. Someone sees it through from start to end. An API has two sides to it. You got to, and so it's not just one person doing their side, another person doing the other side. You still have to make sure stuff works together. So there's this sort of ownership aspect that I think is really great if that can happen on the team, especially when you have enough awareness of how stuff works. So if you know the customer experience, it's a little bit easier to understand how things should work. So that's probably one of the big ones. And, I think the way engineers have worked and the way they work, the things you can do now as an engineer when it comes time to creating UIs for yourself, you don't need a product manager so much. Be able to create test cases when you want to actually write user stories. A lot of these things are in your hands now. So another way to sort of foster this is don't let yourself get blocked. Just if you know how to create the end product, you can start to work your way up. Create your own requirements, because then they'll be written the way you want. So this is another one. And Fox is a strong proponent of being aware of the latest and greatest tools to help you, And so this is another great way to actually advance yourself, especially now. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say especially now, you mean in the age of AI.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And let's go back a little bit. I want you to, relative to your experience, kind of like, what are some of the biggest differences coming from where you come from in the software development lens, like, or at least the time where you started up till now? You kind of talked about one, right? But I'd love from both of you kind of talking about some of the changes, because decisions live here, right? And what we're talking about, you decide to do something a little bit differently because you can now. Tell me about some of those decisions that look different now than they did. And when I say back then, Russ, it's not to your age. I just mean back then, like.
What are you saying? I'll give you one interesting one. And this is the state of maturity of like the systems that we work on now versus a while back. In the old days, we won't say what it is we can. Like, you would need an entire set of a set of people to be able to even host a website. So you'd have to run your own data center. You'd have to have a whole team. And if you wanted to have any kind of scale, even if you wanted to have just a landing page for your website, you'd maybe need 15 or 20 people that were specialists in just being able to stand up infrastructure for you. So and if you want to talk about like how fast can you move and what's the cost of creating solutions where you'd need a large engineering team to do anything. I mean, roll that to now where you got startups, one or two super technical people. They can get very, very far, on creating something, as long as they understand the customer need. Right? That's key. When you know the customer need, then suddenly what takes 20 or 50 can probably take 2 at least to go quickly to start, if you're exactly dialed in on what the customer need is. If you're trying to figure out the customer need, it's a little bit longer. Yeah.
Yeah. No, when you're not, you said a key thing though is a couple of highly technical people who can make that happen. Yeah. What about you, Fox? What are some of the today things that you think about?
Yeah. So I go back to IoT. So I was a part of that boom, and this was 2015, 2016, and where like smart homes and smart offices was the hype. And we thought that our internet connected devices were going to change the world. And then that's when we got Alexa and Google Homes, and everybody was screaming. And now we just have glorified kitchen timers and lights that kind of work when we need them to. And so, but also we saw where the technology started to add value. Predictive maintenance, especially in like the industrial space, saw huge gains from IoT. Smart campuses and smart offices got huge gains from like security standpoint. Like that use case really stood out. And smart homes didn't really manifest as much, in my opinion. But you kind of saw this beginning where everybody was really excited, and then you saw this explosion of tools and companies and platforms and products, and then now they're no longer there. And it's interesting because I'm trying to remind myself the same thing about AI is that like we're in that middle of that explosion. So while it's exciting to get all of these new tools, what we're doing is we're figuring out what the standards are. We're figuring out what the use cases are. We're figuring out what the valuable use cases are. While AI does feel different in some ways, like what Russ is mentioning, like some of the things that I can do that we can do as a development team in a day has been insane just with Cursor and some of the modern tools. But I'm excited to see kind of where those tools consolidate and where we land. Because I think the next hill that we'll cross after this will definitely be quantum. Quantum computing will be 1000% the next hill. I'm trying to, as we think about past versus now, I'm trying to remind myself of that cycle. And we don't know if AI changes something about that. I'm looking to see, and what I'm really paying attention to now are what are those standards that's forming? Where are we drawing lines in the sand of how tools are going to be developed. Like one interesting technology is the model context protocol that's new from Claude and OpenAI. Like that's a really interesting line in the sand. So I'm interested to see what standards and what companies, who makes it. Oh, 1000%. I'm more so talking about all the AI language models.
What's interesting about that is, so the largest ones, right? They're still out trying to decide who's got the biggest model. Which y'all think I was gonna say? Yeah, so they're trying to figure out who's out there, who's got the biggest, the best one. And I'm wondering though, what the qualification of the best actually ends up being when all things shake out. So that's kind of like my thinking is like, what do each of them believe makes it the best versus the best for something specifically, which is what the rest of us have to figure out. So that's my little interesting part. I want to shift a little bit and kind of ask you guys about effective collaboration. So remember, we're talking about this in a decision forward way, right? Because we're thinking about what we're deciding all the time on these topics. So I want to know, how do each of you actually ensure effective collaboration between our development team and the businesses that we serve? So let's start with you, Russ.
I think it's too, you got to write stuff down. This is the one thing that's also changed in the last 5 years, is you could be in an office, you can be on a whiteboard, you can collaborate, and you get a lot of things that aren't written down. You would learn those in meetings, you'd learn those in just discussions. And you'd also, not only that, you wouldn't have to wait for async times, right? So the most challenging part is this async alignment of async, and what could take maybe 5 minutes takes, 5 hours because you got this async back and forth. So this is a tricky one to be able to manage. And as an engineering team and as a company that's entirely remote, sometimes you got to watch and detect when do I have to actually get stuff written down and then talk about it? Or when do I need to get everyone get on Zoom? I used to say get in the meeting, but get on Zoom and say, we got to chat this out. When do we got to get together and pair a program to do something? And you got to make that time to do the synchronous activities. So, and by no means do we have that figured out, but there is an awareness on the team. That being said, engineers can very well work a lot of time on their own. So as I talk, I mean, the biggest thing is creating artifacts when you work as an engineer. And if you're working alone, you need to be able to actually write stuff down that other people understand so that you can just share that out. So like the artifact of software, I would say is okay for software engineers, but for a marketer to look at your code release and go, hey, how am I going to market this latest release? It's like, well, you need to have a little bit more meat on the bone. So I think like the big thing that we're working on, and as a team that evolves over time, is like, of course, how's AI going to help summarize my code and write like documentation, or write like, hey, here's the code base that just came out. Give me some stuff I can talk about on the marketing side. But just as a practice and a process, we have to figure out what's the minimal set of documentation we can write down as a team internally to use that, and then to share cross-functionally with other teams. Yeah, I think that's what. Just be very conscious about the things we write down. Mm-hmm. That's not just the software. I think that's probably one of the big things, and that's something we're working on as a company.
Yeah. So Fox, I'm interested in your answer too. Thank you, Russ. I'm interested because I know you have a very people-centric sort of focus to operating. And so I really want to know how you ensure effective collaboration between development and the businesses we serve.
I appreciate that. I think that it's growing in that direction. But I think that's just the first thing I was going to actually say, is that it's not going to be perfect, especially when you think about collaboration. How you move through conflict to get to the other side is a very important thing to get right. And it's hard. And the way you learn how to get it right is from getting it wrong a ton of times. But like, it's the classic tips in therapy. Remind you, like, we're on the same team. Our goal is to get this sale. We're just trying to figure out what to do that. But what I found is that, especially when you think about like even the high pace speed at a startup, that's where a lot of the best ideas come from, those moments. And, if I love to say, we play chess and we fight to a draw, that's everywhere. And then, I mean, just incredible.
Sure, over hours and hours.
Right. And like magic happens. So I think, and how you all go through that process and then come out of it and remind each other that like, hey, we're still a team and we're still good. That's so important. And then the other really big thing I've seen with collaborative leadership and how I've been making decisions is, I think earlier in my career, I definitely made a decision of like telling my team of how to do something. And you quickly learn that like that's not empowering the other person at one bit. But now with AI, I think everyone's now forced to do this because the how to do it is no longer up to us to decide. And actually, we shouldn't even be deciding it anymore because we have this supercomputer in our pocket that can tell us the best way to do it. So I've been noticing that, like, especially even on our team and like with me and Russ, we're more so gathering our requirements and the context and the outcomes that we want, lesser than the how it's actually going to be doing. Because that is more important for us to define, because now as we start to do the work, write code, get specific, those gaps are filled in with the best options, and we know that they meet all our needs. And I also think too, as like we hand over tasks and talk, I'm noticing myself like, okay, here is all the context I have to solve this problem. And I know our software engineers are like copying it and throwing it into ChatGPT and explaining it, but I didn't tell them how to do it. I only gave context of the context around it. And I think that level of collaboration, it's gonna continue to grow and change. But I think, treating everyone in our team as like mini CEOs, right? You don't never tell an executive how to do something. You're like, okay, here's the outcomes that I need. Here's the context that I have. Go solve the problem. I think that's really been me trying to do that at a higher scale is really where I think not only has been beneficial, I think the future of where this kind of collaboration is going.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked earlier about transparent organizations, which I think is another requirement for what you're talking about to actually work. So for everyone to be a CEO, everyone has to have access to certain information in an organization. So I think that's the other thing. So you got the future organization could be more collaborative because there's more transparency. The one thing I'm interested to see is what happens from an expertise skill experience gap, right? Because there is something to say about where experience doing something actually plays here and how that knowledge gets transfers what I'm guessing, and hopefully if we're good at what we do, into the autonomous agents that'll be able to do stuff, right? So I'm thinking about those things as a future. I want to bring to you guys an idea in brief. So this comes from the Harvard Business Review. So every now and then on these, I find a good one. So I'm going to read to you the problem, and I'm going to read to you the solution that this particular article suggests is the solution. And I want to understand your thoughts and if you agree or disagree.
I like this.
Here's the problem. The problem is the demands of everyday life, the here and now, can overwhelm us, leaving little time to think about the long term and what we are working toward. As a result, when faced with life decisions, both big and small, we are left with nothing to guide us but emotion or intuition. The solution that they claim. So you guys got the problem, right? This is what they state. Here's a solution. In corporate strategy projects, executive leadership teams work through a series of questions to determine how their businesses can succeed. Individuals can use a similar process to figure out how to live a meaningful life. It starts with defining what makes a great life for you and then outlining your purpose and vision. I would love to know if that's what you guys believe are the solution. Do you agree with the problem and the solution? Just give me your general thoughts on this particular area. So typically I'll just say this last thing. We're normally talking about this from the corporate lens, right? We want companies and organizations to adopt our process to make decisions. Here we're saying, what about in your life? So I really want to kind of evaluate.
I'll start with one. I think some works, and like anything else, without a solid set of core numbers, it's hard to get to the more idealistic things you want to do. There are pathways when you're purely purpose driven, mission driven, and you want to do that as an individual or as a team. There are pathways in life that help you attain those things, and so you can pick whatever level of service you want to help with people if that's a way to go. If we're going to roll in the more realistic way of like money, which you kind of need to worry about, then you can get back to the usual. What number do you need, and when do you need that number? Is it for you? Is it for you and your family? Is it for you and your family and their next generation? Is it, what is the level of support you need to get to? So that's just all like the financial planning, which is known to a lot of people. But if you put it out there and say, hey, 10 years, I need to be at this number for these reasons, I'm going to measure along the way. That's a very solid way to start. I think the values and the purpose you mentioned, that's how you seeded it. Not even the notion of dollars came up. And so I think that's a very interesting angle to put on it. Can you formalize your values for a person and add that into your financial planning? And if you don't, to state the thing that you should have is you should have your own financial plan, or you should have someone helping you. Okay. That's number one. That's not tax advice to be anything. That is like sound way to make it through life, is you need some sort of financial plan for you and your family. But when you layer in values and you think about it that way, or what is guiding me? What is guiding us, right? Because it's a me to us thing. So if you're a solo entrepreneur, that's one, but oftentimes you got like a family. Now you suddenly have to have collaboration on and by the way, stay aligned. And so so there is a fair amount of analogous things at work. The question is like, does everyone think that way? Like if you're an executive, you might think like, yeah, cool strategy and all that. But guess what? In a lot of personal situations, you're not coming at it from everyone sitting in the boardroom looking at it that way. I think the theory is cool. I actually kind of like it, to tell you the truth. But practically, I've learned that you all have, the people involved need to be on the same understanding and level of communication like that. So I think that would be my only caveat, is that may not work for everyone.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. You take a very similar approach to how my parents raised me. That's exactly. My mom was very like self-sufficient is like the highest operating goal. And that's still how I operate till to this day. But I think as I think about that question, Teasha, so AI is interesting because I always wear two hats when I think about this. So I have an engineering hat and I have, I would say, my people hat. And it's just like Russ mentioned, it's just a difference in values. I don't think the only difference between the hats, like I think engineering values efficiency. They value least time, algorithms. I think we value impact, outcomes, those kind of things. But it does affect how I look at the solution. On the engineering side, I'm like, let us get replaced. It's okay. Like, let it write code, let it do all these things. I know our work is such an American idea that our work is attached to our identity, but just let it go. You and I were doing a workshop and we're, laughing about jobs that no longer exist. I highly recommend everyone go Google that. There used to be a job to go bring the bowling ball back to the people playing bowling. There used to be like knocker-uppers that used to wake people up in the morning, and you're not feeling bad about their identity and their jobs. And we're not asking about to go back there. I just think that everything's relative when you look at it. And of course, and now as I flip to the people hat, people are really, really, really scared because you're now putting, whether or not agree with it, holding the mirror up to someone creates an effect that we have to address. And I think us as people who build technologies, I'm a big proponent of it's up to us to build the onboarding ramps to allow people to get where we need them to get. But for a lot of the times, we can't really just say, all right, now you are going to change your job. There needs to be some sort of process, some sort of algorithm, some sort of outcome. Like, how do we approach this as people? I think now what makes us good technology builders versus the rest of history is choosing what to build and not to build. Because with AI, we can now effectively build everything. And the answer is all. So the only way from here is basically our identities and values. Like, what do we want to build? What world do we want to see? That's really going to determine more of, I think, that answer to that question about how moving to our jobs to personal life than anything. I want to see more in all of those. But I also want us to just like get replaced. Like, I don't know what's the next. Like, as an engineer, I'm a builder. Like, that's what I do. Like, I take Lego pieces in the universe and put them together. Those Lego pieces can change. Today, I do them with code. I might do it with something else in the future. I'm excited to see what that is. Like, I might be able to build bigger and better things. Who knows?
Yeah, I think what a great insight around the fear. So we're not limited, right, as human beings. This is my belief. We're just not limited in the way that people perceive us themselves to be limited. So, yep, today it's AI and it's going to do a bunch of stuff for us. But just like we got over the calculator hump and the bowling ball hump and the internet hump and all of them, right, we will get through this one too. And there'll be something brand spanking new that we'll start to do because that's what human beings do. We continually create and generate and innovate. So that's great. Okay, here's my favorite part of the segment of this thing. So it's this and then one more question, just in case you were wondering. So this exercise, what I do is I assess your decision-making persona. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions. Each of you will answer with saying, what percentage do you resonate with the question that I asked, as if you would ask the question the exact same way. Each one of these questions represents the way a persona would ask it. You only get 100%. Okay, so I'm going to read the question and then you're going to say what percentage, and then I'll tell you what that persona is, right? You only get 100%. Don't worry. You can always go back and adjust it later. Okay, so here we go. Here's the first question. We're considering a new technology for our clients. How are we going to ensure that this aligns with their specific needs? Fox, Russ, what's your percentage on that?
You said 5 questions?
It's 4 questions total.
4? I
Yeah.
did 25.
You got 25. All right. Russ, where are you on that one?
You went 25 because you don't understand the context well enough to be able to answer a number. I'm going 25 because I don't understand where we're going with it.
That's what happens when you get 2 engineers on the call. I just established a baseline.
Don't cheat the system, Russ. Where?
I said 25.
Oh, you said 25. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Here's the next one. By the way, that's called a feeler, right? So you got a lot of intuition and gut and touchy-feely stuff going on in there. That's called a feeler. All right, here's your next one. What specific data points are we going to rely on to validate our decisions before we develop this platform?
So what's my number? Between 75 and 0, or is it 100 to 0?
You get 0 to 100, but you only get 100 total, right? There's 4
Overall,
questions. Yes, that's
I'd
right.
give that one a 40.
That's a 40 for you.
That's at least 50 for me.
50 for you, Russ. Okay. That's called the data driver. That's the data driver. Here's the next one. The next one says, so we're reflecting on last year's numbers. What specific trends or insights have we uncovered that can significantly influence our next strategies? What we got?
This one's hard because I worked for early stage startups my whole career. So like there was never last year's data. I would have loved it.
Yo, that's the first time I've heard that on this podcast, though. I'm really thinking about it. I guess I'm talking to a little bit more mature companies. But yeah, that's interesting.
I typically were. I've worked for very early stage startups my whole career. So a lot of the times past data was limited or non-existent.
That's
So I'm
good.
going to have to give that one let's call it I guess a 10%.
Okay, 10%.
But I might rebalance these once
I
we're
need to
done.
rebalance, knowing that's one in the arsenal, because I mean, the track record is absolutely key. As when you look at business. So I mean, I guess I've been answering from the sort of like uber early startup stage, but I mean, last year numbers, what's going to happen next year is that's a very good predictor of where things are going to go. So I have to somehow I only have 25 though.
I need you to get a percentage, Russ. Come on, you got to pick one.
I'm going to take 25 and rebalance.
Okay.
My last question.
All right. Okay, because you're already at 100, so you're going to have to rebalance.
Yeah.
All right. So that one, just so you know, that one is called the planner. That's the planner. That's where you just were just now. Okay, here's your last one. So in evaluating our previous outcomes, what key lessons have we learned that fundamentally change our decision-making process?
If that was my last 25.
What about you, Russ? What you got?
I'm gonna. That seems like pretty good. I don't know if I can do it. I would give it 20, and I'm gonna take like my first answer.
Huh?
Whatever I need to take.
Okay. All right. Let me give you your so from your first one you got to take 5% off. All right. So Russ, you are 20% feeler, 50% data driver, 25% planner, and oh wait a minute. I
So
got
I'm only
something wrong.
5 on the first one now.
Yeah, 5% feeler. That's what I meant to say. Sorry. I can't count people. I can't. Yes, 5% feeler, 50% data driver, 25% planner, 20% counter. That's Russ. The good news is you're really balanced. Here you are, Fox. Fox is 25% feeler, 40% data driver, 10% planner, and 25% counter. All right. Use that information for what you will. The good news is you can go back to your team and say, only hand me information that looks like this.
Yeah.
So I love this because the goal is that we're intended to be balanced in our decision making. When we lean too heavily in one place, it might just be for a time, right? It might be based on the situation. You really never ever know. Like your example of, well, in early stage startups, we look at it like this, right? When people really start getting into the nitty gritty, it's just really important to know these kinds of details about how you decide things because it matters. And then what does it mean for this moment? Okay. The last question I have for each of you is I want you to think about our audience right now. And I want you to think about something that you want to share, a really important detail about the future that you believe aspiring leaders in your particular field need to know and be decision forward, of course. But go ahead.
Yes. I have a good one.
Okay.
We now have the opportunity to be really, really, really intentional about our decisions. And some of them may take longer time, some of them may take shorter time, depending on like exactly what the decision is. But what's really nice is that we can, even though my planning was my lowest, I think also effectively that's where I feel the gap in with AI the most. It's because like it plan, and then now I'm like the executor with precision. That has been a really big change in not only like enabling the team, but just myself, but really thinking about how to be 10 times more strategic and intentional about each decision you make is so much more valuable now because we have so much more information around us to do it. We have a PhD in every field in our back pocket, and that's a new strategy all within itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great insight. What about you, Russ? What do you have?
Yes, to me, it's just it's easy. Well, it's not easy. It's my standard question.
That's a Russism,
Why
by the way, y'all. It's easy. Anyway,
is why is why am I doing? Am I deciding this? Why are we doing this? And in a business, it's customer. So you ultimately are targeted first at customer, and then you get into a little bit more. So customer is happy, therefore company is happy. It always starts there, but then it gets obviously much more complicated. But whenever you're doing anything, why? Why is this the case? And then as soon as you can ask yourself that, the exercise that I've found, which is quite interesting, and you trusting AI enough to like let your inner fear of decision making be shared with a partner. You got to type or you got to talk.
That one.
AI cannot yet read your mind, and so to make decisions, which AI is an expert at being able to help, and so collaborating in a way that you're comfortable to do that because it's a very personal thing. A lot of times you think it's your mojo. It's like, yep, this is my secret sauce, man. No one's gonna. I mean, all of a sudden you go, okay, wow, it would have taken me a long time to think of all these alternatives or options. It's fine. AI isn't there to make fun of you, or it's not there to make you feel bad. It's there to help you. So getting
that's
stuff
good.
out so you can ask why, and then look at options to try to get another perspective more than just your own bias. I think so. I think that's the one to be aware of, and it feels like it's a personal thing because it feels like it to me. But once you can do that, you're gonna be able to do it with your teams in a collaborative way, and then suddenly you're not assuming and guessing. You got stuff written down.
Shout
And
out
then
to
you've
C
got
model.
then your team also knows that it's written down, and then you can use that to like make much more decisions better in the future.
This is great. Again, thank you guys both. Thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for being on this call with me on this show. Would you share with our listeners where they can find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah. I am a napped fox on pretty much every single platform, so it makes it easy for a lot of people. And thank you so much, Teasha, for having me on this. This was fun. This was a great podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm very much a lurker, and as not a much of a poster. You find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Muzz. Yeah, and then my budding podcast episodes that I'll be amassing here, starting with this.
Awesome. There it is. That's what I'm talking about. All
Starts
right,
with one.
awesome. Thank you guys so much. And you can learn about C-Model at www.cmodel.io, just in case you didn't already know. And to our listeners, we want to thank you for tuning in. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate it, share it with your network. Let's keep the conversation going on social media using hashtag Dynamic Decisions Podcast. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.